having lunch together, myself and the other speech pathologist, who was also a friend of Sherry's, and she said to Ike, why do you think I invited you and Sherry over for dinner? I said, you like us? She said, listen, if you don't, when we get back from this convention, if you don't ask her out within 2 weeks, she's going to ask you out. I said, oh, God. So, I asked her out, and we went out. We dated for a while, and eventually, everything fell into place, and we got engaged. Meanwhile, I had kind of given up on marriage. I had dated a fair amount, and I was just running into wall after wall. So, but I decided, I wanted to be a dad. I love kids. I'd always loved kids. So I went to the Children's Aid Society of Florida and told them, I wanted to adopt a kiddo. Well, back then, and this was now the late 60s, early 70s, they looked at you like you had a hole in your head, of course, which I did. So that was okay. But they said, look, they gave me all this stuff to read and all these exercises to go through and said, you come back in a couple of months, and if you still want to pursue this thing, we'll talk about it. Well, so I did, and this process took about 9 months, but eventually I was approved. I mean, everybody in my family had to submit letters, and all my friends, and they sliced and diced me up one side and down the other, because they weren't going to let one of their kiddos get in a home with some kind of freaky guy, and which you totally understand. Yeah. But getting engaged, all that went away. If you're going to get married, that's what they wanted. They wanted, obviously, a 2-person situation for their kids and a stable. So if you got engaged or something like that during this process, it was over. But I had been accepted, and sure enough, as soon as we got engaged, I called my caseworker and told her, just great, Ike, way to go. And boom, the adoption's off, though. I said, okay, that's fine. We'll do it the old-fashioned way, which we did.
And at this time, you still pursuing your doctorate at this time?
I'm pursuing my doctorate at this time, that's right. And that was about 7 years going to school half-time and working half-time. I'd get a fellowship at the VA and, half-time research fellowship or clinical fellowship and stuff like that, and go to school half-time. My VA money had run out by then, so I was funding this, which was fine with me.
And then at some point, you finished with the marriage, you get married, and you start having kids.
This is true.
Matt,
he's the third kiddo.
Here we go.
My time to shine.
Yeah, this is your moment. What was it like for you? You're growing up with a dad.
I don't think it was a typical childhood compared to my friends. He would charge into our room. It probably felt like 4 a.m, but it was probably more like 7 o'clock. Wake us up. We'd all be out like in the hallway, in line, like formed up, ready to go prior to school, and he would do what he called belly busters, which is basically morning PT with the family. And obviously, it was very limited, but we did push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks. What else do you have us do?
That's about the only thing I was thinking of.
Yeah, and so it was just I don't think anybody else's kids did that at the time.
You haven't met my kids.
Right.
Oh, there you go.
He would wake us up by playing Reveille. I knew what Reveille was before I joined the military. It was.
They couldn't chew gum.
It was somewhat controlled chaos. There was a lot of discipline there that maybe other kids didn't have. We got put on restriction, which I didn't know what that was until I went to NAPS.
As opposed to being grounded?
As opposed to being grounded. We got put on restriction, and that's just what it was called. And we had to explain what it was to our friends. And
can't go to the movies now. I'm on restriction.
Right.
Sorry.
What is that? And so we have to explain that's being grounded. He was kind of like this hero to a lot of our friends, though, because he was really good with our friends, and he was just kind of a wild man. He was notorious throughout the school system of not being a guy to mess with if you were a school administrator. I think you
mess with my kids, I'm going to be talking to you.
This is not in the notes, but I'll tell this story. I think it was 6th grade, and I had a friend who would get in trouble in class regularly, and I'm the youngest kid, so a lot of teachers knew who I was, and my sisters were probably better at school at that time than I was. And so, the teacher pulls me aside one day, and she's like, hey, you need to stop being friends with Chino. He's just a bad influence on you. And so I go home, tell my dad that. He goes, well, we'll see. Next day, it's, the school that has, the loudspeaker that, clicks on from when the office calls. And I think, one of the office staff was like, Mrs. Schneiderman, I think Mr. Eisenbach is here. She's like, oh, great, I'll send Matt down to the office. And you could kind of hear it in the voice of the office staff, and they were like, no, he's here to see you. And the whole class was just like, what is happening? So yeah, it was clearly different. It's the growing up with somebody that is the essence of the Marine Corps, discipline, kind of iron fisted, is what people think.
But fair.
Sure. Yeah. That's what we're calling it these days. Most of the time, there were things that, you just have to do because that's the way I want them done, or that's what I said.
That's how we do them in our house.
Right. Which is that's what he wants. So, you kind of had to grow up learning just to roll with that sort of stuff, which is, a lot of what you see in the military is we do things this way just because it's the way we do it. Or it's because the way I want it. But, not everything is like that in the military. You get, input, which at 8 years old, I didn't have a lot of input in things. But
so at what point did you decide you were going to go to the Naval Academy?
Like him, we would schedule trips around the Annapolis area to go visit friends, and we'd wind up, at the academy, or
psychological warfare.
Right. We'd go to San Diego for spring break and go check out the naval station, things like that. And so, I had kind of known for a while, I want to be a pilot. This is kind of what I want to do. And I think the best way to go about that is probably go to the Naval Academy. And so I had probably early high school kind of had that idea in mind. Like him, I probably wasn't the best student ever. I got better over time, but at that time I didn't really put a lot of effort into school and homework. So I had to go to what was called Naval Academy Prep School, which is just basically an academic year to get you ready for the Naval Academy. I found out about restriction there.
What restriction were you thinking?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, if I can, one of my favorite stories about Matt was when he was getting ready to apply for the Naval Academy. I thought he had taken the PSAT or whatever that is, the pre-SAT, and I thought, well, we got to bump this up a little bit. So, I'll challenge him. So I made a bet with him. I said, I bet I can score higher on the SAT than you can. And he looks at me of course, I got 3 heads and 14 ears. Oh, Dad. So I meanwhile had strategically bought some of these prep books that I was leaving around the house.
Because we played a win over here in the Marine Corps.
That's right. And hoping he would buy into those, He didn't. But we scheduled the SAT, and we took it, and the results come back, and, you got to be careful what you wish for. I outscored him, and I had a 650 or 750 out of 800 on the English side. And he says, Dad, no one ever gets 750 in English. So that all just came back to haunt me. I beat him on that. But he had a lot of things going for him. He was an Eagle Scout. He lettered in a couple of sports at high school, and he had a good interview with a blue and gold officer, a fellow who kind of recruits for the Naval Academy and around the area. And they got him all over the country.
Probably helps that he knows all those people too. So.
Well, I don't think so, and I didn't know anybody on the admissions board, and it wouldn't have helped if I did. You got in there yourself.
And you ended up being a submariner, though.
Mm-hmm. The Naval Academy, any selection program is going to be tough, and there's only a limited number of spots, and there's physical requirements that you have to meet. I don't have 20/20 vision anymore, so probably being a pilot was not in the works for me. So I just went. I think I got selected as a surface warfare officer, and then I didn't necessarily want to do that. I wanted to do something different or more challenging, and so I went and asked to be a submarine officer, and you have to ask to get an interview with the naval reactors personnel, and so I went and saw the captain on the yard, who was the head submarine officer there, and he looked at all my stuff and said, "You picked the wrong major." I was an econ major at the time, and again, probably didn't have the best grades ever, but I was good enough in math and science that he let me through onto the naval reactors interview. So went from there. You got to go, still kind of like old school, where you used to have to go interview with Admiral Rickover, and he'd play mind games with you. They keep that tradition alive. You still go interview with the 4-star that's head of naval reactors, but fewer mind games, more just technical interview and then go.
And how many years did you end up doing?
I did 6. I got out in 2012, July of that year, so just a little over 6 years.
Nice. And so, Ike, what are you doing now?
I am what I call fully retired and enjoying it immensely. After my speech pathology career, it just kind of petered out. Here in the Pacific Northwest, it's a whole different atmosphere and ball game for allied health professionals than it is on the East Coast, which was okay. But so in 95, I went into selling life insurance and mutual funds, which I enjoyed, but wasn't wildly successful at, but was successful enough to pay the bills and keep some income coming in. But finally, I ditched that and decided to live a life of leisure, shall we say. But every day is a little bit different. Getting up in the morning is not typical. You got to get braces on and make sure you don't fall out of bed. One of my theories is gravity always wins, and it always does. So everything's just a little bit more difficult, but it's okay. It sure beats being at Arlington, kind of looking up at the sod, which is where I theoretically should be.
Well, we are certainly glad that you didn't end up there.
Likewise.
And that you ended up here. It's probably a good place to wrap it up. Just awesome to sit and talk with you.
Well, likewise, Jocko.
Did you have any closing thoughts, Matt? Anything that I missed?
I don't have any closing thoughts.
Well, it's just one thought. Here's something that we almost always miss in the service, and frankly, in any kind of industry or stuff like that. And that's the part that your spouse plays for you. My wife has been terrific over the last 41 years. She's the love of my life, and B, the mother of my children. And I don't think I could get through a week without her. She helps me. She points out where I'm turning left when I maybe should stay the straight and narrow. She's a good cook. She's pretty good at managing money.
Well,
and I love her dearly.
Well, that's awesome, and like we can often overlook the families, whether it's the husband, the wife, the kids. They all make a huge sacrifice. But for those that are still in the military, they always make the sacrifice to support their spouse. So absolutely, to the families out there that are out there supporting the spouses, thank you to you all. And sir, it's just been an honor to sit here and talk with you, and
thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show. More importantly, though, obviously, thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
Well, you as well, Jocko, and also you, yes.
Yeah, well, we're waiting on that echo.
Everybody serves in their own way.
That's true. There we go. You just got a fist bump from Echo Charles. The sacrifice that you made, the efforts that you made, that's what allows us to be here today as a free people doing what we're doing. So thank you for putting your own safety and your own life on the line for this country, and we deeply appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your service again, and for all those out there who have served and are serving. Get some. Hoorah!
Awesome. Thanks, I appreciate it.
You bet.
And with that, Charles